The Queen's Gambit by Walter Tevis. The story of The Queen's Gambit begins with an image of stark loss. 8-year-old Elizabeth Harmon, a girl defined by her plainness, her unremarkable brown hair cut in blunt bangs, and her quiet, watchful demeanor, learns of her mother's death in a car accident from a woman holding a clipboard. The woman's detached professionalism, the mole on her cheek, are details etched in Beth's memory. A newspaper photograph captures her in a simple cotton frock, standing on the porch of her now empty home, a visual representation of her sudden, profound isolation. Beth is sent to the Methuen home, a Kentucky orphanage. The daily routine includes 2 small green tranquilizer pills, dispensed to all the children to even their dispositions, along with the standard vitamin supplements. For Beth, these pills become a lifeline, a chemical shield against the constant gnawing tension in her stomach and the overwhelming anxiety of her new sterile surroundings. She forms a bond, part wary, part reliant, with Jolene, a tall, black girl with a scowl that hides a surprising well of empathy. Jolene, older and wiser in the ways of the orphanage, introduces Beth to the harsh realities of their world, the unspoken hierarchies and the unspoken fears. The basement of the Methuen home becomes Beth's sanctuary. It is there, while performing the mundane task of cleaning blackboard erasers, that she discovers Mr. Scheibel, the orphanage's janitor. He is a portly, misshapen man, often hunched over a green and white checkerboard with strangely shaped pieces. His intense focus, the air of quiet mystery surrounding the game, captivates Beth. She begins to watch him, drawn to the intricate dance of the pieces, the silent exertion of power across the board. Her persistent requests to learn the game, initially met with gruff dismissal, "Girls don't play chess," eventually break down Mr. Scheibel's resistance. He becomes her reluctant mentor, teaching her the names of the pieces, their movements, the basic rules. Their lessons are marked by silence and a shared intensity, a connection forged not through warmth but through a mutual respect for the game. Beth is a prodigiously fast learner. She visualizes the chessboard and the pieces on the ceiling of the girls' ward at night, playing and replaying games, analyzing positions, discovering strategies with an almost preternatural intuition. The green pills enhance this ability, allowing her to sink deeper into the world of chess, finding both escape and exhilaration in its complexities. Beth's understanding of chess expands rapidly. Mr. Scheibel introduces her to Modern Chess Openings, a technical book filled with notations and diagrams. She devours it, learning openings like the Queen's Gambit and the Sicilian Defense, internalizing the patterns and variations. Her mind becomes a living chessboard where lines of force, diagonals of attack, and files of control are constantly shifting and reforming. She begins to beat Mr. Scheibel consistently, her victories marked not by gloating but by a quiet, intense satisfaction. He recognizes her exceptional talent, her astounding. Jolene, a complex figure in Beth's life, shifts from initial antagonism to brief, unsettling intimacy, and finally to a kind of distant respect. Beth learns from Jolene about the harsh realities of the world, about sex, about prejudice, and about the unspoken rules of survival within the orphanage. But Beth's world is increasingly defined by chess, and she finds herself drawn away from human connection. Mr. Scheibel arranges for Beth to play against Mr. Gans, the coach of the local high school chess club. The encounter is a revelation. Beth, small and unassuming in her orphanage clothes, easily defeats the older, more experienced Mr. Gans. He is stunned by her skill, recognizing a level of talent he has never encountered before. This leads to the simultaneous exhibition at the high school, where Beth, fueled by tranquilizers and a burning inner drive, systematically dismantles a dozen older male players. The experience is both empowering and alienating. She feels the energy of her mind, the power of her strategic thinking, but also the vast gulf between herself and the world around her. The triumph at the high school leads to consequences. Mrs. Deerdorf, the stern and unyielding superintendent of the Methuen home, forbids Beth from any further contact with Mr. Scheibel, effectively cutting her off from chess. This deprivation, coupled with the sudden withdrawal of the tranquilizers due to a new state law, throws Beth into a state of desperate anxiety. She hoards the few pills she has left, rationing them for emergencies, but the nights become long and sleepless. filled with the sounds of the orphanage and the gnawing emptiness of her chessless existence. Driven by a desperate need for the calming effect of the pills, Beth breaks into the orphanage pharmacy. She is caught in the act, standing on a stool, surrounded by shattered glass and spilled green pills. A picture of tragic desperation. The consequences are severe. No more chess, no library, no playground, strict chapel attendance, and the constant threat of physical punishment. 3 years pass, marked by isolation and silent rebellion. Beth continues to play chess in her mind, memorizing variations, analyzing positions, clinging to the game as a source of internal strength. She maintains a perfect academic record, but her true education takes place in the silent landscapes of her imagination. Then at 13, a dramatic shift occurs. Beth is adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Wheatley, a couple from Lexington. Mr. Wheatley is a distant, emotionally unavailable man, more concerned with his own career than with his new family. Mrs. Wheatley is nervous, flighty, and overly attentive, clinging to Beth with a desperate need for connection. Beth is given her own room, a beautiful private space that represents a profound change in her life. She is enrolled in a regular school where she excels academically, but struggles to connect with her peers. Beth's desire for chess resurfaces, but she finds no outlet for it at school. She discovers chess sets at a local department store and begins to frequent Morris's bookstore, where she devours chess books, memorizing games and deepening her understanding of strategy. She steals a copy of Chess Review, driven by a hunger for the world of tournaments and grandmasters. Mrs. Wheatley's financial instability and her growing dependence on tranquilizers become increasingly apparent. Beth, desperate for money to enter a local chess tournament, secretly writes to Mr. Scheibel asking for a loan of $5. He sends the money without comment, a silent testament to their shared past. Beth enters the Kentucky State Championship as an unrated player. The tournament organizers, skeptical of her abilities, try to steer her towards the beginners section, but she insists on competing in the open, driven by the lure of the larger prize. She navigates the early rounds with a growing sense of confidence, defeating opponents with increasing ease, her moves marked by a speed and precision that attract attention. She encounters Towns, the handsome young man from Lexington, who is covering the tournament, and feels a spark of attraction, a hint of a life beyond chess. The final game against the reigning state champion Harry Beltic is a tense, drawn-out struggle. Beth, sleep-deprived and lacking her usual clarity, makes a critical error, allowing Beltic to exploit her weakness and force her resignation. The loss is a bitter blow, a reminder of her vulnerability. However, the loss also marks a turning point. Mrs. Wheatley, recognizing the financial potential of Beth's talent, proposes a partnership. They begin a whirlwind tour of chess tournaments across the country, with Mrs. Wheatley managing the logistics and taking a small agent's commission. Beth's life transforms into a relentless cycle of travel, hotel rooms, and intense competition. She wins consistently, her ratings soaring, her name becoming synonymous with chess prodigy. She is featured in Life magazine, a symbol of female empowerment in a male-dominated world. Beth's drinking begins subtly, with beers shared with Mrs. Wheatley on airplanes, and then escalates, becoming a way to numb the anxiety and the loneliness that accompany her success. She relies increasingly on both alcohol and tranquilizers to manage the pressures of competition and the emptiness of her personal life. Her relationship with Mrs. Wheatley becomes increasingly complex. There is affection and a shared sense of adventure, but also a growing dependence and a sense of unease. Mrs. Wheatley's own struggles with loneliness and her reliance on alcohol and pills mirror Beth's own vulnerabilities. Beth's success continues, culminating in a co-championship at the U.S. Open. She receives an invitation to the prestigious Moscow Invitational, a gateway to the highest echelons of international chess. But the death of Mrs. Wheatley in Mexico City throws Beth's life into turmoil. She is left alone, grappling with grief, guilt, and the sudden weight of responsibility. Returning to Kentucky, she buys the house from her estranged adoptive father, a transaction marked by bitterness and resentment. She spirals into a period of heavy drinking, neglecting her chess studies, isolating herself from the world. A phone call from Jolene, her childhood friend from Methuen, becomes a lifeline. Jolene's strength, her directness, and her unwavering support provide Beth with the anchor she desperately needs. Jolene confronts Beth's addiction, urging her to take control of her life, to stop hiding in self-pity. Beth begins a rigorous physical training regimen with Jolene, pushing herself to exhaustion, reclaiming her body and her sense of discipline. She confronts her past, visiting the Methuen home and discovering the hidden shrine Mr. Shable had created to her chess achievements. This discovery, a testament to the silent, enduring impact she had on his life, fuels her determination to return to chess. She accepts an invitation to participate in the U.S. Championship, but her preparation is hampered by her lingering addiction and the emotional turmoil of the past few months. She receives a tempting offer of financial support from a conservative Christian organization, but she rejects it, unwilling to compromise her principles for money. This decision leaves her facing the daunting prospect of funding her trip to Moscow alone. A brief, strained reunion with Benny Watts provides some technical guidance, but their relationship remains fraught with tension and unresolved conflicts. Beth recognizes that she has surpassed him in skill, but she still craves his validation and support. The U.S. Championship is a triumph. Beth plays with a renewed clarity and power, defeating her opponents with a combination of strategic brilliance and ruthless determination. She emerges as the undisputed champion, securing her place as America's best chess player. Her victory brings her recognition and acclaim, but also a sense of isolation. She is surrounded by admirers, but she feels disconnected, unable to share the depths of her experience with anyone. The dream of playing in Moscow, of facing Borgov again, becomes both a source of hope and a source of profound anxiety. The Moscow tournament is a grand, imposing event. Beth navigates the unfamiliar environment, feeling the weight of expectation and the scrutiny of the international chess community. She wins her early games, displaying a masterful command of the game, her moves precise and decisive. The final game, against Vasily Borgov, is a titanic struggle. Beth plays with a clarity and focus she has never before achieved. She anticipates his moves, counters his threats, and gradually, inexorably gains the upper hand. But Borgov is a formidable opponent, resourceful and relentless. The game stretches on, becoming a test of endurance and will. A long-distance phone call from Benny Watts, offering strategic advice and unwavering support, breaks through Beth's isolation and provides a crucial turning point. His insights, combined with her own intuition and skill, allow her to see the path to victory. Borgov offers a draw, a tacit acknowledgement of Beth's strength, but Beth refuses. She wants the win, the complete and undeniable triumph. She forces the game to its conclusion, achieving a checkmate that is both elegant and devastating. The victory is a moment of profound liberation. The applause of the audience, the respect of her peers, and even the grudging acknowledgement of Borgov himself wash over her, erasing the doubts and fears that have haunted her. She has conquered her demons, overcome her limitations, and proven herself to be a true champion. The story's ending is imbued with a quiet, understated hope. Beth, surrounded by the warmth and admiration of ordinary chess enthusiasts in a Moscow park, offers to play a casual game with a stranger. This simple act symbolizes her reconnection to the pure joy of chess, stripped of the pressures of fame and competition. She has found her place in the world, not just as a chess player, but as a young woman who has faced adversity with courage and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the challenges and the possibilities that lie ahead. The final image is one of connection, of finding belonging not in victory, but in the shared love of the game itself. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next book.